Azoth by Zeitgeistic. Chapter 8. Putrefaction. Putrefaction. The process of decay or rotting in a body or other organic matter in sulfur. Disintegration by spontaneous decomposition. Decay by artificial means. "It must have been a success," Hermione said dubiously when they stumbled in. Crookshanks was curled up in her lap, serving as a desk for the notes she was reading. "Malfoy's looking entirely too pleased with himself." Yeah," Harry said. "Rather." Draco followed him in, cool as ever despite his less-than-coordinated steps. "Ranger?" He quirked an eyebrow. "Malfoy. Then, well, which potion was it?" Belatedly, Harry remembered what they'd actually left to accomplish. He fished out a vial. Navy blue potion sloshed around in it. "Liver repair. Draco said it's perfect. Have a look." Hermione dutifully took the vial, held it up to the light to examine the viscosity. She uncapped it, sniffed from several different angles, and then delicately touched her little wrist fingers to the potion. She dabbed her tongue. "It's... wow, Harry!" "It's good, isn't it?" he said, grinning. It was possible he was still rather a lot drunk, and the kissing certainly hadn't helped his mental faculties. "Perfect." "Perfect," she agreed. The door to Hermione's room opened and Millicent strolled out, glanced disinterestedly in their direction and then noticed the potion. "Liver, is it?" she said, sounding very much as if she couldn't care less. "Oh, I told you he could do it," Draco said smugly. Said Millicent and continued on out the door, peepfully dutifully, ignoring the narrow-eyed look Hermione was giving him. The portrait hall shut behind them, and Hermione's gaze returned to the two of them. Malfoy said he was off to bed, and then it was just Harry under her bemused look. "Is something the matter, Harry?" "Nope." How could anything ever be the matter again? He smiled at her, guilelessly. Hermione rolled her eyes. "You're drunk, go to bed, and be grateful I'm not head girl." Harry didn't need to be told twice. Harry was practically chirping the next morning and all of the week following. His potion in class was outstanding, marvelous, per Slughorn. In Transfiguration, Switch told him his gas to liquid was quite satisfactory indeed. And his check-in meeting with McGonagall regarding the state of his career aspirations, she said, "I am not quite at the point of despair for your future and livelihood, Mr. Potter. Carry on." Which was high praise indeed. Harry floated through the whole week. Draco sat with him in class and at meals, and gave him secret, seductive little grins when no one was looking. Terry danced him around the common room when Phil Dagwood caught the snitch and racked Harry 150 league points, and Harry wasn't even annoyed. He wrote Ron 2 letters. He went down to have tea with Hagrid and ate a rock cake. Snape had nothing derogatory to say about the color or consistency of his drunkenly brewed liver repair elixir. On Thursday, Hermione asked him what a dirty snitches was, and he explained it happily and in detail without blushing, even as Hermione's eyes became progressively wider. He didn't even falter when she took out a quill and diary to make notes. In short, everything was great. Except for the part where they'd both been so busy that week that the understood reconvening on Friday's outlandish attempt at sex had yet to manifest. He'd pushed Draco into an alcove after lunch on Wednesday, but they'd barely had a chance to start snogging before a passel of first-year girls came by talking loudly of hair charms. As they stood there, stock still, Harry pressing his body as close to Draco's and the wall as he could get, he suffered through the entirely over-erogenous experience of Draco panting against his neck, and tried very hard not to dive. He wanted to rip all of Draco's clothes off, right there in that sketchy little alcove, and have him against the wall. Or even the other way round. Harry didn't care. They just could not get a Merlin fucking break. Well, there was still Friday, Harry thought happily. Friday came, and Harry entered their appropriated classroom to find Draco already there. He was lying across one of the work tables, eyes closed, obviously indigenizing. Those erections Harry feared might never return, never had a problem doing so around Draco, especially when he was spread out like an offering on the table by Harry's rookie potions lab. One eye cracked open as Harry began setting up his cauldron on the adjacent table. "I'm stuck again," Draco groused. He pushed himself up on his elbows and stared dully out the water pouring in the cauldron from Harry's wand. "And bugger if I can figure out why. Have you done it yet?" "The transformation?" asked Harry. "Yeah." "No." He flicked on the burner and turned to face Draco directly. "Just hybridization. I've done a beak and feathers." "Why not?" "I was waiting on you to catch up, moron." Draco flopped back down on the table. Harry moved closer, thinking of all the ways he could occupy himself while his water began to boil. "What does it feel like to hybridize? I've got indigenization down, I think, but whenever I try to grow my snout or tail, I just can't." He sighed. "McGonagall will never take me if I can't transform. Fuck, I have to do this before Newt or I'll be stuck tending father's business accounts for the rest of my life." He slammed a hand against the table in frustration. Harry sighed and turned his burner back off. Definitely didn't want any repeats of last week. "It feels weird," Harry finally said. He shrugged and hated it because he really had no idea how to describe becoming part animal. Draco's brow crumpled tragically. "Why can't I do this?" he whispered. Harry sat on the edge of the table, worrying the hem of his sleeves and feeling wretched on Draco's behalf. "Do you want to use Legomancy again?" he asked. Draco sighed. "Potter, you really shouldn't offer me carte blanche with your bloody head." Harry shrugged. "Better you than Ron." There was way too much in there he never wanted Ron to see. This finally got a smile out of Draco. He sat up again. "Fine, yes, I do. Can I?" Harry rolled his eyes. "Obviously." Draco's nose scrunched. "You really need to stop spending a free period with Snape's portrait. You're starting to sound like him." "He is insulting me into greatness," Harry protested. "Yesterday I learned why beeswax neutralized poisons when he was on a rant about the state of my hair. Did you know they're not really stones but hairballs?" "Shut up, Potter," Draco said, exacerbated. Harry grinned at him. They settled into position. Harry took a deep breath and cleared his head of all the happy, lovelorn thoughts that had filled it since Sunday. It would be a time to tell Draco how he really felt, but it probably wasn't 5 days after their first kiss and a failed check. Harry suspected there was a protocol for this sort of thing, which required at least 1 month between a relationship beginning and declaration of devoted and undying love. Were they even in a relationship? Harry bit his lip. It hadn't occurred to him before that they might not be, but there had been no word either way. There would be time to figure it out later. He pushed everything aside and met Draco's eyes, smiling. "Go on." "Legomancy." Having been at practice for some time now, Harry zoomed right through meditation and visualization. He slowed down at indigenization to make sure he did a proper job of it. Speeding through this step could lead to unfortunate results when one got to the next bit. He felt himself take on the aspects of the crow. He felt light, hollow. He felt small. Flying would be so simple. The prospect of eating decaying flesh was enticing rather than stomach-churning. Slowly his mind remembered what it meant to be a crow. He felt the spirits of the world around him, and knew that he could take them to the other side if he wanted to. Draco was like a warm, uncomfortable addition to his mind. Warm because Harry felt warmly towards him. Uncomfortable because he felt warmly towards him. He was exposed like this. The crow in him didn't like exposure. It was skittish, and it cawed warningly at Harry whenever Draco's presence crept nearer to get a better look at the proceedings. Finally, some minutes later, when he'd indigenized the crow completely, he slid into the next step: hybridization. Feathers sprouted over his skin. His nose and jaw hardened and lengthened. His hearing became acute. There was a mouse in the room, hidden beneath one of the desks. It would probably be pretty delicious. It wouldn't take much to transform all the way and find out. He'd waited for Draco to finish first, yes, but it was almost more difficult to stay at this step than it was to move forward into full-form actualization. Harry had been this crow for a long time, even if he'd never actually flown as one. He tried his best to broadcast his feelings of sprouting feathers and growing a beak to Draco, hoping that he would be able to translate that into fur and tail. "You're nearly there. Just do it," Harry heard in his mind and nearly jumped at the sound. He could practically feel Draco's grey eyes rolling. "You fast," Harry sent back. He felt Draco shake his head. "I want to feel what it's like to transform." He might as well. He gathered all his magic, let his conscience retreat from everything but the here and now of his first transformation. Draco became a distant, forgotten attendance as he pushed himself over the final hurdle. He told himself to shrink, told his body to change. For many minutes nothing happened. And then he understood it. Understood the last part as he'd come to understand the 4 steps before it. The crow was Harry, and Harry was the crow. And he did shrink, and did change. It took 10 minutes at least, but he'd done it now, and he knew it would be instantaneous next time. He stared up at Draco from much farther away than he'd started, and felt elation and cockiness and fucking love. He transformed for the first time, and the person he loved had been in his head the whole time and witnessed the entire incredible experience with him. Draco pulled roughly from his mind. Harry fluttered around in the air, pleased but clumsy with his wings. He half glided, half fell back to the ground, closed his eyes and focused on transforming back into himself. When he did, he grinned. "It's brilliant," he said. "Really brilliant. Now you just have to do it, and we can go out around the grounds in our forms and chase things, and—" "I don't think so." Harry paused. "Well, why? It will be brilliant." Draco stood, dusted his trousers off, and grabbed up his book bag. "Thanks, Potter. I think this will do for our lesson. See you around." Harry scrambled to his feet. "What? Draco, what's wrong?" Draco spun to him, his face a mask of fury. "What's wrong?" he hissed. "Your bloody Gryffindor emotions are what's wrong. Is there no one who doesn't want to own or imprison me?" He turned to leave again, and Harry's face drained of blood. He'd broadcasted all of that. Harry grabbed his wrist, a quick flashing movement that stopped Draco's whole body and brought his cheek close to Harry's face. Close enough that he could see the way his hair moved when Harry exhaled. "Don't." Draco breathed. In, out, in. "Don't what, Potter?" "Don't leave." Draco shook his head. "I won't do this to myself. You're attracted to me too. I know you are. You wanted me last week." It was Harry's imagination that his voice sounded that panicked. There was no reason to panic, surely. Everything was pretty perfect in Harry's life right now. How could anything bad be happening?
I wanted your body. I thought I'd be safe to try with you. I thought you'd never wanted to keep me.
Harry shook his head. Somehow the entire thing felt like a dream. He wasn't even sure it was happening. Try what with him? He opened his mouth, but couldn't think of anything to say. Draco wrenched free and took several seconds with the pretense of straightening the buttons on his robe sleeve.
I don't want what you want.
Harry swallowed, but kept his chin lifted stoically. He would not go down like this.
What do I want?
Draco finally looked at him, and his eyes were so grey and solid that Harry would have sworn he didn't reflect light at all. There was no hint of green wall sconces in them, no hint of anything safe or decisiveness.
Love? A boyfriend? Yeah, so?
He shifted uncomfortably. Draco hadn't dropped his gaze, hadn't wavered at all. He stepped away towards the door, and Harry added quickly, desperately,
Everyone likes love. Love is a cage,
said Draco.
And I will be free.
This time, he really did leave.
Morning, Potter.
Harry stiffened. He looked around the great hall to see if anything looked amiss, anything that would signal that this was a dream. Everything looked normal. Hesitantly, he lifted his eyes to the person now sitting next to him, poshly buttering toast.
Draco,
Harry said. Draco ignored the catch in his voice. He said,
Shame Cadwallader fumbled to quaffle last night. Looks like I'm in the lead again. Draco, can we...
No, Draco hissed, finally turning to look at him. Did a quick glance up and down the table to ensure none of the other 8th years were listening in and said,
Potter, I will not talk about last night. We will go back to how things were last week, when neither of us had taken leave of our senses.
Then he turned to look away and took a sip of water from his ever-present bottle, and made every effort of continuing on with his breakfast. Harry swallowed.
I don't think I can.
Draco's eyes narrowed. He snapped his wand and privacy spell flew up around them.
You can and you will, or we'll end this friendship right now. I won't be owned by anyone, Golden Boy, not even you. But could we just... I'll stop, Harry promised. I won't be in love with you anymore. You were fine with it before when I just wanted to shag you. Look, I'm really not in love with you, see? It's me, Harry, not in love. It was just a momentary thing because I was excited. It won't happen again.
Draco didn't blink.
You can't just make yourself stop, Potter. I can do anything I want.
Draco snorted, but it wasn't the amused-sounding one he used to use when Harry made a crack about Hermione and Millicent studying together.
Not even you can do that. I just want to be able to touch you again,
Harry said, desperate. Draco's mouth flattened in an angry line.
You've heard my terms. Take them or leave them. What will it be?
Harry clenched his fists.
I'll be your friend.
Draco was all smiles again.
Good, he said. Would you pass me the pumpkin juice? I wanted to get your opinion on the assignment Slughorn gave us. Did you notice anything peculiar about it?
Harry forced himself to relax and drink his juice, pretend everything was normal. His hands were shaking, and his insides probably were too.
Oh my God, he thought hysterically. It's only been 5 minutes and he expects me to keep this up for the rest of my life? It was peculiar, he agreed lamely. It seemed really simple compared to everything else he's given us. My thoughts exactly, said Draco. I thought maybe he just wanted easy markings since he's got his last slug party coming up next weekend. Right, yeah, said Harry. Probably.
Draco's eyes narrowed.
Are you going to be able to do this, Potter?
He set his silverware aside and turned to face Harry more fully on the bench.
Or should we end this now? Yes, I can definitely do it, obviously.
Harry's fingers clutched in his robes again, and he was reminded of Draco teasing him about the way and frequency he said obviously now. His heart lurched. Fuck.
No, he said, swallowing. Oh, I can't do it. I know what's missing now.
Harry stood, scooped his rucksack up in one hand, and walked around Draco. He forced whatever tiny occlumency walls he could muster to come up and shield him enough to put one foot in front of the other without losing his mind.
I'm sorry. I have to do this for myself.
And then he was gone. By the end of May, the empty space at Harry's side that Draco had only just begun to fill was already changing into something new, but somehow more volatile and maddening than the same empty space that existed before Malfoy. He learned to live without Draco in the same way one might learn to live without a hand. He knew it was missing, he couldn't not know, but life still existed without that hand, and so therefore must he. But if he chose to avoid star clubs in the meantime, well, that was his prerogative. And Malfoy was wrong. Harry didn't want love and a boyfriend. Not if wanting that led to this. What he wanted was his best mate back. And he hoped to Merlin that Ron never learned Legislamancy, because all that confidence he'd gained with the Aurors would be shot to shit if he found out best mate meant Malfoy, not Ron. It was just that he could no longer separate best mate and love in his mind. How had he bollocks this up quite so royally? Should have never given Malfoy up. And yet the thought of talking to him again and knowing nothing would ever come of it felt like standing in fiendfire. 1 week, Hermione said at dinner near the end of May. 1 week, 1 week, 1 week. It was like a battle chant for her. Harry had made it 3 weeks without Draco, without a battle chant.
I don't know why everyone always got so bothered about newts,
said happy fucking Terry Boot.
Just another set of exams. When we finish them, we'll officially be wizards, even if we only get trolls across the board. Won't that be grand, Harry?
Harry made an effort to be engaged. This was his life, after all.
Finishing school or getting all trolls?
Boot laughed, as if this was a great joke. Harry, upon reflecting on his life, supposed it was.
Finishing school, of course. Say, are you really planning to stay on as Professor Snape's apprentice? I heard you were, but I thought it couldn't be true. If I get an O in potions, I am.
Boot grinned, and it was such a nice, happy grin that it made Harry's mouth curve up as well.
God, he hated Boot.
Hated how happy and together he was. And he also thought he was an all-right chap, and they probably would have been friends if Harry wasn't trending towards basket case-dom these days.
It's brilliant. I just need to get an O in astronomy, and I'm under a Posh Point observatory. Can't wait for Mexico. I love sun, don't you? Sure, sun's great.
If one could brew a proper Sunton solution. Harry, said Hermione, always his wing-woman, even though she was sometimes an entire conversation too late. Did you rebrew that hot helper? You were struggling with it last week. He scowled.
I remember. I rebrewed it.
Thanks to Snape, he did that. Merlin, he was almost becoming fond of the stupid bastard portrait. He'd once thought he'd never pass potions without the prince's book. Now he didn't necessarily need the book, but his understanding of the theory had only improved since Malfoy stopped. Well, now that Harry was brewing alone, Snape made a habit of showing up in the Caravaggio opposite the work table. He didn't even comment on the fact that Draco never came with anymore, even though, like Dumbledore, he surely must have known. For that, Harry could be grateful. The downside of this was that he had no outlet for his sarcastic commentary except Harry. The upside was that Snape was indeed incredibly bored and had a lot of commentary to offer, thus leading to Harry finally understanding the value of precise stir counts in medical potions. Dark Caravaggio backgrounds and tortured expressions suited the late potions master more than pre-Raphaelite idyllis, at least.
1 week,
she reminded him.
I could hardly forget.
He dredged up a smile for her, much easier than for Terry Boot.
Don't worry, Hermione, I've got this.
She pursed her lips.
See that you have.
Then she pulled out a bottomless bag and fished around for something. Millicent became engaged in the proceedings shortly after her head and torso disappeared inside. Her eyes met Harry's over Hermione's bent, half-missing form. He shrugged.
Hell of a bag.
Boo took up a conversation with Susan then. Millicent's eyes followed their discourse for a moment, judging, then turned to gaze him.
You think you'll get a no?
She asked.
I got an E on my owls, no less.
Less to know for our owls. She rolled her eyes. Harry shrugged. She sighed.
Draco got his animagus last night.
That was not what he'd expected to hear, nor what he wanted to hear. Draco didn't need him. Never would need him. He pushed that thought away, and when he smiled at Millicent, at least his pride was genuine. For Draco.
Good for him. Tell him I said congratulations.
This seemed to be what Millicent was looking for. Her eyes roved his face for a split second, resettled on his own. You aren't talking any longer?
No.
She took this in stride, considered him for a moment. Draco's like a boggart. You'll never know what he truly looks like if you're looking right at him. It's only when he thinks you aren't paying attention that he becomes himself. You shouldn't have looked at him. His whole body heated with something unidentifiable. He hated Slytherins, hated how enigmatic they were, how they so enjoyed riddles, how insightful they could be. He hated that he might love one of them, and they were the hardest people in the world to love, because to get close to them was to walk across a live battlefield in your shirt sleeve with your arms spread and your eyes closed.
Too late now,
he said, shrugging. Millicent frowned. You had dimples when she did. No, just stop looking at him. Too late for that, too. First morning of Newts came, and Harry felt invincible for the 20 minutes it took for him to stumble out of bed and into a set of robes, then make it down the stairs for breakfast. Then he saw the examiner's rigid faces at the head table and felt disinclined to finish his breakfast. Eat, Hermione said.
Not hungry.
I didn't ask if you were fucking hungry, did I? I said to fucking eat your breakfast so you have some fucking energy for your charms, Newt. You bloody fucking stubborn cookie Gryffindor prat. Every face at the 8th-year table turned towards her, many with mouth gaping. Harry supposed they hadn't heard the addition to her vocabulary yet. This was nothing.
Stressed?
He asked lightly, though he did cut up a sausage and start eating again.
Yes,
she growled. He smirked at his plate. At least he wasn't stressed anymore. It was hard to take anything seriously when Hermione was swearing.
It's just charms you've got this.
He made an annoyed, shrilling sound and stormed from the breakfast table. Millicent rolled her eyes. Harry grinned at her, and then his eyes slid past her. His stomach clenched as his eyes met Draco's. For a moment there was no one on earth but them. The look was so private, so intense, so very much like the looks he'd received when they were still friends. And then Draco looked away, and the sounds of the great hall rushed back in to fill the void that remained, like high tide in Cornwall.
Attention, students,
Flitwick called from the head table.
Breakfast is over now. 1st through 4th and 6th-year students will disperse to their common rooms or other quiet activities. 7th and 8th-year students sitting in Charms Newt will report to Charms Wing for their Newt practical. 5th years will remain here for their written Charms exam now. Up to it!
Hermione was, of course, already waiting by the time Harry arrived at the Charms Wing. Her hair fluttered behind her, almost like an afterthought, as she paced back and forth.
"Harry, thank Merlin,"
she said upon seeing him. She strode over, grabbed his shoulder. She shook him once and said very calmly,
"I am having a nervous fucking breakdown."
"It's just charms," he said again. "You ordered a protein charm for Galleon, made an infinite handbag, and survived a duel with Anton Dolohov with only a 30-centimeter scratch. I think you'll be fine." He breathed deeply.
"I suppose you're right."
They were called in alphabetical order again, which would have been fine if Harry wasn't in the same group as Draco and Parkinson. He did his best not to let it affect him, but he could still see the look Draco wore in his mind's eye, and it made him miss him desperately. The actual practical wasn't too bad. They started him off asking for 3 degrees of stasis charms, and with all his potion work lately, he was practically a pro at those. Next, he had to make a piglet fly without transfiguring wings onto it, and finally cast a glamour over himself that made his eyes black and his hair green.
"Are you going for extra points, Mr. Potter?"
The examination witch asked at the end without looking up from her notepad.
"Yes, what are my options?" "Any high-level charms not taught as part of the standard Hogwarts curricula will be considered for extra points."
So he cast the Patronus, feeling inordinately pleased with himself as the flash of shimmering white leapt from his wand. But then he noticed a shape and his face drained of blood. There was a greyhound dashing about the room, and any hope that he could cancel it before Draco noticed was shot. For the second time that day their eyes met, and Draco looked anything but happy.
"Very good, Mr. Potter,"
the witch said, bored. He ran from the room as fast as a snap.
"Harry,"
Hermione whispered as he was walking back from the written examination that evening. She tucked him into the girls' loo, where, fortunately, Myrtle was nowhere to be seen.
"It's all up and down the castle that your Patronus is a dog now. I thought you were over serious by now. Are you not? If you're not, then—"
"It wasn't Snuffles," he said. The pet name for Sirius Animagus form barely gave him a twinge of pain these days. That was good, he supposed. She paused.
"Then what?"
Harry looked away, down. There was a long crack in the marble floor by the sink. "It was a greyhound." She breathed in hard, deliberately through her nostrils, took a single step back to better look at his face.
"That's Malfoy's animagus."
"You don't have to tell me," he said bitterly. "I'm well aware."
"What happened between you two? You were thick as thieves for months. Was the happiest of seniors since Ron started aura training."
Harry's mouth twisted.
"I know. I don't know, Hermione. You couldn't have really expected us to be friends forever. It's me and Malfoy, for fuck's sake."
She bothered. He hated that she bothered. He hated that no one could see what had really happened, and that he couldn't tell them either. He felt like he was going to explode with the weight of it.
"I love Draco Malfoy, and no one will ever know,"
he wanted to scream.
"All right, Harry. I'll lay off for now. Let's just get through Newts, and then we'll have all summer at Ron's to decompress. Then back to Hogwarts for another 3 years."
She grinned.
"I hope so."
She took another deep breath.
"We can do this, Harry. There's always life after, well."
"I know," he said. It sucked, but if Hermione could handle life after family, then he could do life after Malfoy. Even if he was the only one who knew it had been there to begin with. Merlin. Fuck, it hurt to hold it all to himself, but he wouldn't betray Draco by telling. He owed him that much at least. The next Monday his last newt came. The potions examiner let them in at exactly 10 a.m, and Harry took up his usual seat with the emotional burner. At least it wasn't Wednesday.
"Only one at table. I come around with a hat from which you will draw a piece of parchment. Upon the parchment you will find the name of the potion you are to brew." After you have brewed your potion, decant 2 ounces for analysis. Then continue through the door at the back of the room to the written examination, where you will receive further instructions.
The wizard came around and Harry reached into the hat for a piece of parchment. The examiner was already moving on. Harry unfolded it and read and wanted to laugh. Liver repair elixir. You could quite literally brew this potion drunk. Draco had seen to that, at least. He set his cauldron up and headed for the front of the room, where a selection of potions ingredients were arrayed for him to choose from. There was the boggart liver and the astragalus and chicory root, and on the other minutiae involved. He took a measure of distilled water and returned to his table. It was while he was steaming his chicory roots that he caught the movement from the corner of his eye. The painting was of a darkened transmutation lab, so he blended in well. Snape watched Harry's brewing with a curious focus. Their eyes met once, but Harry quickly looked away, back to his potion before the examiner could see him. This was one newt he definitely didn't want to get accused of cheating on, and soon the feeling of ice on him had faded away entirely, and he lost himself to the meditative effect brewing brought him. When he finished his last set of 100 stirs, he set his rod aside and took a moment to just look at his potion and feel calm. It was perfect. Better. It was his version of perfect. It had taken until this newt to achieve, but he finally, after all this time, understood what Malfoy had meant when he said you could repaint a Dali, but it would never be art until you were an artist yourself. He was certain he understood it now. He moved on to the next room after turning in his 2-ounce sample for analysis and was greeted at the door by a young witch with a crooked nose, like she'd broken it once or twice.
Choose the parchment. You will find 6 potions on the table to my right. Your assignment is to identify the potions on your parchment and write about the brewing process for each. Details on the board.
He grabbed another paper from her hat. Heart-helper potion, cold cure, draught of living death. It wasn't difficult at all to identify his 3 potions, 1, 2, and 6, nor was it difficult to know what to say. He worked so much with them lately that he rather thought he'd have too much to say. Hermione would be amused, and vindicated most likely. Elated from his practical, Harry set to work outlining the potions. A crick in his neck had him looking up to work it from side to side, and there he saw him again, looking refreshed and intensive in a Vermeer. Harry gave Snape a small smile, which remained unreciprocated, and returned to his essays. When he finished, he felt both relieved and pensive. He knew he'd done well, but well enough. He was fairly sure of it, but never before had he understood Hermione's need for perfection until now. But he was done, and there was nothing more he could do except wait for his results. He exited quietly, carefully avoiding looking at Draco as he passed his desk on the way out. It was impossible to miss Draco's elaborate script and the large liver repair elixir printed at the top of his page. They'd done that potion together, sort of. And here they were, sort of doing it together again. Harry wondered if Malfoy remembered that night together as he wrote, the way Harry had been propelled by the memories of Draco's hand on his waist and the way they'd counted together, and the smell of chicory root in Draco's freshly washed hair, and how much focus he'd needed to keep his spells within the acceptable power range when he'd been drunk off whiskey and Draco's body heat. Harry would never forget a single part of how to brew that potion ever again. It had had too many vibrant memories attached to it. Draco's fingers tensed around his quill as Harry walked by. A drop of green ink splattered on the desk. The same color ink Harry used. Stop looking at him, Millicent had said. He could do that. Harry shut the door carefully behind him. Potter! Harry turned. Snape had followed him into the Siren's painting outside the potions classroom.
Yes, Professor. Take some time this summer to harvest a selection of inedible mushrooms for your first assignment as apprentice. I shall see you in September.
Then he disappeared, leaving Harry alone in the corridor. His mouth stretched slowly, at first with disbelief, and then with the unbearable pull of happiness. He jumped in the air, whooping, and not even caring that he would look utterly ridiculous to anyone watching. Then he took off for the common room to write a letter. He couldn't wait to tell Ron. Hermione had fallen asleep against his shoulder. He couldn't blame her. He was nearly there himself. But the whistle of the train roused him from his doze as it slowed for their arrival in London. Ron was on the platform with Mrs. Weasley, and Harry felt insanely like a first year coming home for the first time. His laughter woke Hermione, who blinked sleepily at him before following his gaze. "Oh, Ron," she said, a little sadly. Ron was waving madly at them already, looking unfortunately dashing, decked out in his scarlet aura robes, with the wind sweeping his hair all about. They both plastered on excited smiles and waved back. "Good to be home, isn't it?" said Terry. "Yes," Harry said, and meant it. It was good to see Ron again, even if they were drifting apart. 3 broomsticks this Sunday, yes? They're coming." "Oh, I'll be there," Harry assured him. He might even bring Ron. Maybe it would help them reconnect, and Ron could go back to filling that hole that Malfoy dug for himself and then abandoned. Out on the platform, Ron rushed them, crushing first Hermione and then Harry in overexcited, scarlet-coloured hugs. "Merlin, it's been an age," he said, and couldn't seem to stop himself from grinning. "Oh, I got your letter, Harry. Or you're fucking me about." "Ronald!" Mrs. Weasley exclaimed as she disentangled from a hug with Hermione. They ignored her, and she bustled off to find Ginny, who decided to ride home in Luna's compartment with the other real 7th years. "Not at all," Harry said. "Won't know for sure until results come in July, but Snape seemed confident, and well, it's Snape." Ron whistled, still grinning somehow. "Blimey, Harry." "I checked," Hermione said. "He's definitely not on the Imperius." "What, really?" Harry was scandalized. "It's just a bit of patience." Ron and Hermione both rolled their eyes. "Last-minute career change to worst subject ever," Ron said. "And suddenly seeking the approval of a dead patience professor that, might I add, you despised," Hermione added most unhelpfully. "You are both horrible friends," Harry muttered. "I can fight off an Imperius in case your memories are quite that poor." "Are we ready to go? Got your bags, Harry, Hermione?" Mrs. Weasley said, returning from the train with Ginny and Luna in tow. "Yes, Mrs. Weasley," they chorused. Harry couldn't help turning for one last look at the train before he stepped through to the other side. It was at that exact moment that Draco turned from his mother's dotage to look his way. Their eyes met and held, and then, with more willpower than he actually felt, Harry turned away and walked through the gate.
"Why don't you just write the book? 20,000 galleons is a lot of dosh. You could buy a flat, travel, whatever." Why this wasn't a done deal was quite beyond Harry. Hermione didn't have any other support, and apprentices didn't receive any stipend beyond room, board, and 10 galleons a month. Barely enough for necessities. She needed it. She flopped back on Ron's bed and stared with a frown up at the cannon's poster on the ceiling. Harry wondered if she found it as disagreeable as he did. "Would you really want everyone to know what it was like for us? For you?" "No. Maybe it will give them some perspective." "It won't change them," Ron said. Harry rolled his eyes. He knew. "I'd rather Hermione write it than Skeeter. And if they're offering Hermione to do it, it just seems stupid for her to pass it up. Especially when authorship is something our Hermione's always wanted." Even from his bed he could see the blush suffusing her face. She was always a little surprised when he or Ron managed to show that they actually paid attention to her. "Well, I don't know," she said. "Just do it," Ron said in that way that Ron always did, because he saw the world in black and white, or maybe orange and white, and sometimes Harry wondered if it would be easier to go back to that. "Harry doesn't mind." He cleared his throat. "Although try not to linger over much on my, missteps." Harry laughed. "Maybe you could just not mention Ron at all during that time. If you never say it one way or another, it'll look like he was just unusually quiet for a month."
"I could do that," Hermione said, frowning thoughtfully.
"Nah," Ron said. "I was a buck. Don't romanticize it."
"You were a bit of a bug," Hermione allowed, but she was smiling. All of that was over now, and they could laugh about Ron being twatty. "All right, I'll do it. They want my outline by the end of the week, so I suppose I'd better go and get started." She stood from the bed, stretched out a kink in her neck, and wandered over to Harry. Bent down, pressed a kiss to his head, and then said, "Thank you, Harry." Then she ruined it by wrinkling her nose at the state of his hair and making a frustrated, abortive attempt at fingering it into some degree of decency. She shut the door behind her as she left, and Harry turned back to Ron, who was staring at him with one cocked eyebrow.
"Nothing like that. You know how she is,"
Harry said.
"If you're sure,"
Ron said.
"Because it would be okay if you did."
"I'm sure," said Harry. Ron resumed his relaxed pose against the wall, his legs stretched out before him on the bed.
"I was beginning to wonder if you'd change your mind about preferring blokes. Haven't heard about anyone special, you know."
Harry chuckled.
"Who has time to even think about that sort of thing with all that crap they threw at us last term?"
he asked, but in his head he was chanting,
Me, and I'll never change my mind after Draco Malfoy."
Then, to get things back on safer ground, he said,
"How are things with Lavender? Is she going to be a partner full-time?"
Ron grinned again. After 3 of them, he had the straightest, most uniform teeth, and it bugged Hermione no end. You could take the girl away from her dentist parents, but you couldn't take... Well, Harry didn't really know where he was going with that one, actually, except to avoid thinking about Draco.
"She's great," Ron said. "We really get on these days. It's so weird. But Dawlish and Robobs think we're got a team, so I expect so."
He paused, a sheepish look crossed his face.
"Do you think Hermione'd mind if I brought her over for dinner one day? I'd really like it if we could all be friends, you know."
Well, Hermione was a saint, but Harry wasn't sure that this wasn't pushing it a bit far.
"You'd better ask," he said. "Course," Ron said. "This weekend, if she agrees, sir. There's this great pub in Muggle London, and they always go to sometimes. We could catch a game of footy on the telly, you, me, and Hermione. That's what they're called, right? Tellies?"
Harry grinned.
"That's right. But I don't know if Hermione'd be interested in watching a football game. Do you want to come to the Broomsticks with me on Sunday for my Quidditch Fantasy League?"
Ron looked wounded for a moment before it cleared from his face.
"Sounds great, Harry, yeah. Anyone else in it with you?"
"Well," Harry said, wrinkling his nose,
"there's Terry Boot." "He's an all right bloke,"
Ron said. Then he turned thoughtful.
"We're so happy, though."
"Yeah," Harry said with a grimace. What was with people being so happy? First Boot, then Malfoy. An ache coursed through him. He pushed it away. He was so bloody tired of struggling with those feelings he hadn't any control over. Malfoy wasn't interested, and that was fucking that. There was no need to be stuck on Draco sodding Malfoy. Plenty of fish, big wide world, etc., etc.
"And Malfoy's in it too,"
he added, because it was better to rip these things off like a plaster.
"Bloody wanker. You mean you didn't walk straight out when you saw him in there?" "Oh, no. We were friends for a little while. I actually joined the league with him."
Ron threw himself back on the bed as if living were too much to bear.
"Please tell me you're having me on." "Afraid not. We've been going back and forth on first and second place all season."
Harry frowned, remembering the distant looks Draco sent him on Sundays when Vic announced the standings and Harry was in first again. There was none of that spark left when he looked at Harry. It was like he was dead. In theory. Not for the first time a single question rang through Harry's head, echoing like church bells. Why? Why had Draco changed his mind about him? Been so keen at first night. Were Harry's emotions really that off-putting? It wasn't like he did it on purpose for Merlin's sake.
"Are you beating him now?"
Ron asked. Harry smirked.
Yes, just pulled ahead again.
This seemed to satisfy Ron.
I suppose I can handle this, so long as you're still better than him. Ron!
Harry said, laughing. Maybe their friendship wasn't dying after all. Maybe it just needed time.
What bullshit,
he thought. He and Ron could be mates until the end of the world, and it still wouldn't make up for the feeling he got whenever he turned to tell Draco something funny, and Draco wasn't there. "That's not a moral," said Hermione. Harry eyed the mushroom more carefully. He plucked it up and checked the inside of the stem. Cottony, not hollow. He tossed it in his bag.
Good. I don't want a real moral, I want a false moral. Why?
Ron was eating an apple from a wild apple tree. Hermione had already checked to make sure it was a real apple, while Harry and Ron patiently and quietly waited for her to do so. They weren't stupid, after all.
Snape said I need a bunch of poisonous mushrooms.
The quiet became tense, and Harry stood to find Ron and Hermione communicating silently.
What?
They looked at him guiltily. Well, what if you don't get an O? Newt results won't come for a couple more weeks.
I would probably sink into a deep depression at the thought of joining the Aurors and then struggle to hide it by blowing millions of galleons, fronting as a playboy to distract myself from post-Malfoyism.
Or something slightly less melodramatic, maybe.
I'm going to get in.
They shared another speaking look. Ron was the first to look away. Harry bent down to gather more false morals.
Say, Hermione,
said Ron.
Would you mind if I had Lavender over for dinner? Let us all get to know each other better, you know.
Harry peeked up, Hermione's eyes fixed on Ron's face, her look intense. There was a decidedly entertained glint to her stare. Sure, Ron, if I can invite Millicent. I'd like us to get to know her better, too. Harry smirked and said nothing. He could practically hear the gears working in Ron's brain, perhaps a little creaky from disuse. Harry knew the exact moment that Ron caught on.
Well, sure. Mom does love to cook.
He prodded Harry's rib with a boot.
Anyone you want to invite, Harry?
Clenched his fist around a moral, accidentally destroying it.
God, yes. No, thanks.
Because for some stupid reason his +1 no longer cared to speak to him. It was just a little love for Merlin's sake. Never killed anyone. Probably. Might start with Harry, actually.
Get it together, Harry,
he thought.
You can't live through your whole life like this.
But then again, where was rationality when you needed it? Probably with Hermione. The dinner went okay, about as well as could be expected when Hermione was forced to suffer Lavender Brown's company and Mrs. Weasley was forced to attempt conversation with Millicent. Although even Hermione would have to admit, as Mrs. Weasley brought out the pudding, that there was something different about Lavender. Something strong and Gryffindor that she'd lack all through school. And she sat with Ron on her left as if she wouldn't let him forget that that half of her face was covered in 4 long red slashes. Ron didn't seem to mind. He gazed at her adoringly when she wasn't looking. When she smiled at him, her cheeks dimpled only on one side.
You should have invited Malfoy, Harry,
Ginny said. Harry choked on his Ch.8.
Weren't you two friends last year? I swear I never saw one of you without the other after Christmas. I bet he would have liked to get away right about now. Oh, yeah,
Harry said, bemused.
Yeah, he was busy.
And poor boy, Mrs. Weasley said. I can't imagine what you must be going through right now. Bewildered turned to Hermione, but it was Millicent who caught his eyes. She shook her head minutely. Reluctantly, he turned back to his Ch.8. Everything in the kitchen was tense after that. Or maybe it was just Harry. He could have married, had 3 children, and sent the first one off to Hogwarts in the time it took Mrs. Weasley to declare supper over and begin clearing the plates. Harry grabbed the girls directly after and dragged them outside to the shed amid Mr. Weasley's muggle miscellanea.
What happened?
Millicent pursed her lips. Hermione worried her own. He stared between the two of them, feeling his skin come all overheated.
How horrible could it be? Hermione broke first. "Oh, Harry, didn't you see the prophet? It's been all over the paper for days." "You know I don't read that rubbish. What happened?" "His father was killed by an Azkaban guard in May, but it was hushed. There was an investigation going on, and Malfoy had to give testimony right before news. A dozen witnesses came forward to say the Auror had acted out of protocol, but charges were dropped 2 days ago." Harry stared. "Fuck." The traitorous thought that maybe this could have had something to do with Draco's reluctance entered his mind and wouldn't leave. "Those people never change," Millicent snarled. She turned and punched Mr. Weasley's dartboard, right on the bullseye. "They always think we're worthless, and they'll always get away with it because of fucking insignificant nonsense like dark and light magic. It was a reducto to the hat that blew Lucius Malfoy to bits, Potter, not Cruciatus. Fuck your light magic and your pretentious definitions of good." "Oh, Mel," Hermione murmured, ran her fingers over the other woman's knuckles and the skin knitted together in their wake. Harry followed the motion with his eyes and was momentarily overcome by the memory of Draco's sharp gaze focusing on him whenever he did wandless magic. He hadn't done any since then. He hadn't been able to. "Oh, shut up, Hermione," Millicent said, sighing. "Sometimes pain is compulsory." I should write him, Harry thought, then. Fuck, I'm the last person he'd want to hear from. He wanted to be there for Draco, but that was selfish. So he turned away, put it with the egg beater on the workbench, and reminded himself that Draco didn't want him around anymore, especially not at a time like this. The letter came on the 1st of July. It said, "Dear Mr. Potter, I am delighted to inform you that you have been accepted into Hogwarts apprenticeship program for potions and herbal transmutations under Severus Snape, Master Alchemist, 1st degree, Master Transmutist, 1st degree, Grand Master of Potions, 3rd degree, deceased. Please report to Hogwarts by 5 p.m., 31st of August for supper and room assignment. Enclosed you will find a list of required items. Note that apprentices must be dressed in the colors of their master at all times, so we suggest that you purchase more than one set of robes. Details enclosed. We look forward to the next 3 years of discovery with you. Yours truly, Minerva McGonagall, Headmistress, Order of Merlin, 1st class, Grand Mistress of Transfigurations, 3rd degree, Mistress Transmutist, 2nd degree." "Bloody hell," Ron murmured. Harry jumped, startled. Ron stood behind him, peering over his shoulder, a half-eaten apple in one hand. "You really did it." "Yeah," Harry said. Had he really? It felt surreal. Flipped to the next page and saw the results of his Newt exams. Charms exceeds expectations. Defense against the dark arts, outstanding. Potions, outstanding. Transfigurations, acceptable. Outstanding! He'd gotten outstanding! Across the breakfast table, Hermione made an anxious sound. They both looked. Her face was white, her hands gripping her own letter too tightly. "Hermione?" Ron said. "I got in." Harry laughed. "Well, of course you got in. It was me we weren't sure about, remember?" "I'm going to be an arithmancer," she said, face still bloodless. "Yeah, in 3 years, though," said Ron. "That's ages. You'll have plenty of time to get used to it." She squealed. "Oh, Harry, Ron, I'm so excited. I've got to buy apprentice robes and books and a new abacus and... Oh, I hope Millicent got in too. I know they weren't sure about letting both of us apprentice under Professor Vector at the same time and..." She ran away from the room and Harry shared a look with Ron. They grinned. It was almost like old times. It was almost as good as sharing a joke with... Nope, no, it wasn't. "Blimey," Ron said, tossing the apple core in the compass bin beneath the kitchen sink. "Wait till Lev hears about this. I can't believe you're going to be apprentice in potions." "You'd better start believing," Harry said as he scanned the list of required items, "'cause we'll be 22 before you see me leaving Hogwarts again." Ron laughed. You better at least come out for my ceremony when I make full aura in 2 years.
Harry grinned.
Wouldn't miss that for the world, mate.
And he meant it. Right then, at least, he meant it. To be continued. Thank you for listening to this chapter of Azoth by Zeitgeistic. If you'd like to stay up to date on upcoming chapters and stories, you can follow me on YouTube, Spotify, or AO3.